earth, water, air, fire. I do not invite you to understand spirit as analogies. Spirit, in the form you know, is unique to the earth. You must understand it this way to comprehend that the rules are different here than elsewhere. The organization of patterns of molecules into elements depends in part on the spiritual resonance that underlies them. It is most appropriate that you comprehend this resonance as the organization of different songs. These songs create the opportunity for the elements and molecules to organize into dance. The dances can change while the songs remain the same. And the critical organization of the songs shifts dependent upon access to the rhythms. The rhythms depend upon the way in which the songs interact. They begin with the songs, and the songs themselves are present. The stillness of a solid gives way to the fluidity of liquid, gives way to the more rhythmic patterns of air that interact into the chaos of the fire. The chaos of the liquid interacts with the rhythms of the stillness, and the rhythms of the stillness create the organization of matter. The stillness is not present if you do not understand the movement within it. Some layers of the stillness remain the same for durations of time that frame your consciousness. These songs may be present within you without invoking the presence of the molecular elements. The molecular elements are an expression of the songs. To identify them first with their presence on the physical plane is to misunderstand their presence within you. You are composed of each of these. You are composed of the songs of each of these, and these songs interact in a way that can be far more influential as you change it. The presence of feeling is interdependent upon your awareness. Thus, you cannot feel certain elements until you know not only where they are, but how they move. Your consciousness must be capable of following the rhythm of their movements in order to feel them. As you begin to feel them, your awareness creates more presence, and your presence with the rhythms allows them to become more powerful. Thus, this knowledge is power. The power within you to transform yourself is dependent on your ability to navigate how these transformations affect the world around you. You are capable of resonating with the songs of the elements in a manner that changes your fundamental relationship with the elements. Thus, you may learn how to carry your life through fire. The way in which these elements interact with your body is dependent on your ability to interact with them consciously. and your conscious interaction forgives the mistakes you have the potential to make. Thus, you must step both carefully and without caution. You must understand how to give way to this. Giving way allows you to follow the rhythms that are truest to you. Thus, you are consistently humble in relationship to both what you intend to create and the aggregate message that your spiritual presence gives you. Thus, you are trusting yourself as you go deeper, not only the conscious self you identify as you, but the presence of what is you that you have not included as you. The thresholds between the elements matter more than the elements themselves. Thus, it is by learning to pay attention at these thresholds that you engage them in a manner that offers you more influence over them. Be simple. They are first about the rhythms of motion. Thus, while there are many different songs that are sung within a solid, none of them will change the basic presence of the consistencies that make solids. As this transformation enters fluid, a greater level of movement emerges. However, the form of this movement is in direct relationship to the center. The center, in this case, is the earth. Thus, water will flow in consistent patterns. There is a flow within solid. However, it operates on a scale of time that makes it very difficult for you to engage. Thus, know that it exists without engaging it yet. The rhythms of fluids move in consistent patterns that then give way to a more chaotic rhythm that has order within it as fluids become air. As fluids become air, they engage a rhythm of movement that frees them to be both smaller and more independent. This independence gives way to a multi-directional movement that is far less capable of controlling. Thus, when you engage air, you become the center that influences far less than you do with liquids. Because your influence is less, you engage it with more respect. And yet you cannot understand this respect without understanding your capacity to induce greater heat. Greater heat is in direct proportion to movement. Your ability to induce fire is a threshold that ignites the change in rhythm between all of the elements. Igniting the changes in rhythm creates a phase of existence in which you cannot initially comprehend which songs are going to ultimately hold sway. Thus, you listen first for the song of the element itself. If you are transitioning between a solid and a liquid, you listen for the solid song giving way to the liquid song. If you are giving way, then you allow. If you are focusing, then you hold the center of the song you are becoming and allow the other songs to become more silent. The same transition is present between liquid and air. As you engage a song that becomes liquid, you bring together many independent flows that are present in multiple directions and free from as much influence as the liquid will have. If you are offering a transition into air, you surrender your focus and open yourself to ride a rhythm that you have less influence over, with the consummate trust that you can remain present in this transition. To be present in the fire itself is to recognize that this fire must be present in you in every phase of an elemental presence. To understand the circle of this presence is to know yourself as something beyond what you have known as yourself, thus offering to dance in a way that can maintain its presence as the song of an element changes is the secret key. Seeking a dance that transitions between is exactly the safety that you must find in order to unlock your power to transition in consciousness. Thus, you have the ability to enter the center of your presence in fire, even while you continue to recognize that you yourself are more than the fire. This depends upon your ability to buffer the presence of the fire within you. You cannot do this without channeling it with the intention to maintain some of the compounds of water, earth, and air. Water, earth, and air combine within you to create the seeds of new possibilities. You cannot transition between elemental presence unless you identify clearly which seeds you are. This is your power to choose the dances that maintain themselves while the songs change, and then to choose the songs that maintain themselves while the dances change. To know yourself is to direct and channel the energy of the element you are becoming. Your focus is, again, dependent upon the humility that you engage these transitions with the knowledge that you are all of them, and yet your focus is making some part of you more powerful than another part of you. This only works when you recognize that the elements like to work together within you. They enjoy the way in which they create each other. Thus, a metal can be melted from a solid, forged into a new form while in liquid, and brought back into solid. Each of these compounds have different thresholds, and because they have different thresholds, you are liberated to transition between molecular compounds while staying within different elements. Thus, the heat that is required to transition from a solid to a liquid in one form is different than the heat that is required to transition from a solid to a liquid in another form. The freedom that comes from the recognition of where you can rest your consciousness is the alchemy that enables you to transform some elements from one into another. As you gain the capacity to do this, you learn to recognize how life works. Life enjoys continuity. Life itself far exceeds the presence of any one element. And yet, as you engage any one element, you face the concern that you may over-identify with it and destroy the elements of life that are needed for you to continue. Thus, the knowledge of the interaction within elements liberates you to recognize the presence of life. Life itself does have an end. Life, as you know it in your body, has an end. And when you recognize where this end is in relation to the breakdown of the collaboration of the songs of the elements, you learn how to keep dancing while shifting where you are dancing. For this to make sense, you must learn to recognize that you can shift your form to identify with the liberation that comes when air is born out of liquid. You identify with this liberation and at the same time identify with the yearning to return to fluid form. You must be able to feel this desire while maintaining your focus at the same time on the liberation. If you don't, you will immediately fail to make the transition and fall back into or stay within liquid form. The same is true of air. If you use too much movement, heat, fire will take over the air and burn it away. If it burns it away, it will have no more fuel and then it will cease to exist. The balances are crucial, and you can only learn to engage them through the trust that they are present in a manner that gives you direction. And this direction, once again, comes from life. Life was initially the gift of the desire of the interaction of the songs. The interaction of the songs has harmony, and this harmony comes from the center of the earth. This calling is different here than it may be elsewhere. Thus, by maintaining your identity on the life that is present on earth, you prevent your consciousness from over-identifying with the elemental fire presence, which would ultimately lead you to over-identify with the sun itself, where fire is most present. This ability to transition out of the planet is intrinsic. You must be able to feel this potential in order to not follow it. If you follow it, you will die. If you don't recognize this potential, you will fail to understand that the yearning to enter the elemental presence can lead into the death of your body. This is a caution that is based in respect. You must be able to respect the yearnings you come into touch with. You come into touch with your consciousness. As your consciousness feels the yearnings to go deeper in a particular elemental presence, you must be able to both feel it and restrain it. If you cannot do this in simple form, you cannot do it in complex form. If you cannot do it in complex form, your consciousness will fall apart, and you will return to an awareness that is unable to engage the elemental presence. The earth has given you basic gifts to comprehend these changes, sacred gifts that are present and latent, and they are typically unleashed by your ability to induce movement in an element that you are present with, or stillness in an element you are present with. Cold brings stillness, heat brings movement, or movement brings heat, and stillness brings cold. Thus, you must be able to transition certain forms of stillness into movement within, and you must be able to transition stillness within into movement that is present and available for you to see.